sing a song with me. Come sing a song with me. Come sing a song with me, that I might know your mind. And I'll bring you hope when hope is hard to find. And I'll bring a song of love and a rose in the winter time. Come dream a dream with me. Come dream a dream with me. Come dream a dream with me, that I might know your mind. And I'll bring you hope when hope is hard to find. And I'll bring a song of love and a rose in the winter time. Come walk in rain with me. Come walk in rain with me. Come walk in snow with me, that I might know your mind. And I'll bring you hope when hope is hard to find. And I'll bring a song of love and a rose in the winter time. Come share a rose with me. Come share a rose with me. Come share a rose with me, that I might know your mind. And I'll bring you hope when hope is hard to find. And I'll bring a song of love and a rose in the winter time.
Good morning. Welcome to the Unitarian Who said that? That was enthusiastic. Very good. Thank you. Everybody should try that. Good morning. Oh, nice. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Spokane, where our mission is to join together to create a nourishing, liberal religious home and to champion justice, diversity, and environmental stewardship in our wider world, or in short, just as much enthusiasm, or in short, to create community, find meaning, and work for justice. Oh, you guys are good. Welcome to all of you. Great to have you. As always, we begin by embracing all that you bring with you, all that makes you you to this space. Your unique beliefs, your background, your lifestyle, your experiences are all welcome here. And this includes those who hear us say this as an important part of our ritual every Sunday, as well as those who might be hearing it for the first time. You're equally as welcome and appreciated. And thanks to those of you who are streaming with us too. We also embrace you. So thanks for being here. Before we take just a few moments to greet one another, a couple of things. One, I wanted to just personally say thanks to the many of you who have expressed some concern for Peggy and I. A lot of you have heard, some of you haven't, that Peggy's dad was diagnosed with dementia about a year and a half ago, and probably had it a lot longer, but it's come with some paranoia, and it caused him to run away from home, essentially from Alabama, about 3 months ago. And we finally traced him down in Lutz, Wyoming, and Peggy and I went and found him and brought him back here, and he stayed with us for about 2 months, and we finally were able to get him back to Alabama last weekend, where he's getting some treatment and will be placed in a residency where he can get the kind of assistance that he needs that we can't provide. But anyway, I just thought there lots of people have heard different things, and lots of you have expressed concern and also lots of support. So I wanted to, thank you and sort of fill you in on what's been happening with us, and really appreciate all your thoughts and concerns for us over the past couple of months. I don't know where Peggy is. I know she's here, but there she is. So I know she shares in my gratitude. Speaking of gratitude, this is the last Sunday of our annual community auction. I see people are putting down bids even as we speak. So we're just a second. But what I wanted to do was thank all of you, of course, for contributing and for bidding on things to help for this important fundraiser. But more importantly, this really serves as a great community maker, as a fundraiser for us. And we can't do it without the wonderful team that works so hard year after year to put it together. And I just wanted to name them this morning so that we can offer our gratitude, and hopefully you will thank them personally when you see them. But the team that has made this such a successful event in both fundraising and fundraising include Lorraine Heath, Sandra Horn, Candace Schmidt, and Jan Strobeck. Yes, congratulations. Thank you all so very much. And I want to just give a couple extra. Diane Critchlow, there she is, to say just a little bit more about the auction while she still can. And to get her face in front of you more so you get to know Diane, one of our newest additions to our staff.
Well, thank you. I'm excited to be here this morning, and just to piggyback on what Todd has said, this is the last weekend for the community auction, and I want to encourage everyone to take a look at what's available. We have a motorcycle trip, we have kayaking, symphony tickets, baseball tickets, a brunch, and it is just the perfect way to be able to get to know people, to really become a part of this community, and to make some friends, and just to have, like you said, have some fun. And so it's a great event for the church. It really does create community. For those of you who've been here a long time, it's an exciting way for you to reconnect, and then also to welcome some new people. So even if you're here for the first time or the third time or the 10th time or the 100th time, please avail yourself to this opportunity. You are welcome, and we're excited to have you here, and hope that you will take the time to go ahead and look all around the room and fill out something that you might be interested in. So thank you, Todd. Thank you for this time, and welcome, everyone.
Thank you, Diane. And if you do bid on that motorcycle ride, I'm pretty sure they'll let things thaw out before you take advantage of it. So,
ski on the front part.
Oh, put a ski on the front. Yeah. See, Tom, that's you Northwesterners, man. You guys are amazing. You can do everything in the winter. But listen, let's take just a couple of minutes to greet one another. Please say hi to those you look forward to seeing each Sunday. Make some new friends today. If you're joining us for the first time, don't be shy. Thank you so much. Please stay around after our service for more conversation during our social hour. But for now, we're going to move forward by lighting our chalice and then move directly into our first hymn of the morning. We light this chalice as the symbol of our faith, the symbol of our unity and our solidarity, of our openness and our inclusion, of our community and our individual uniqueness. May this small flame be our offering of warmth to those who are cold and alone, and a light to those in darkness. May it be a flame that ignites justice in our world, and a beacon of hope to those in need, and may it reflect at least a spark of truth wherever truth has been lost, and cast a healthy shadow of doubt wherever it's been found.
Now, if you would please rise as you're willing and able to sing the first in-service hymn of the day. It's Spirit of Life, 123. We will sing it through twice.
Okay, my turn. Okay, I'd like to invite all the little ones or anyone who's young at heart. Come on up. I see some kidlets back there. Come on up. Kidlets, that's what I call small children. Like chicklets. Kidlets. Hi. Today I'm gonna tell a story. It's called Coyote and the Monster. Do you know this story? It's a Nez Perce story. It's a native tribal story, and it's about how the tribes got their land. I thought it was similar to forming the Unitarian Universalist Church. So we're going to start with Coyote, and Coyote was at a waterfall above Celilo Falls, which actually doesn't exist anymore, but it used to be a wonderful waterfall on the Columbia River, and he was working on a fish ladder so the salmon could go upstream. But he looked around and everybody was gone. All his animals came by and told him that the monster had eaten them all. So he decided that he would make himself tasty to the monster. So he gathered all that he needed, and he had some flintstones and some stuff to make a fire with. And suddenly he found the monster, and he saw this giant head in the grass. And he was hiding because he was afraid, big head, just as huge as you can imagine. And Coyote shouted, "Oh, monster, let us inhale each other." Well, the monster moved through the swaying grass and said, "What? Coyote?" "Coyote," said the monster, You inhale first. So Coyote tried. But of course, the monster was just too big. The monster just swayed and shook. And Coyote said, well, you inhale me so I can be with all my friends because they're all inside you because you've eaten them all. But the monster did not know that Coyote had 5 flintstone knives, a flint fire-making set, and some pitch. So the monster inhaled a mighty wind, and Coyote dashed right into the monster's mouth. So Coyote looked around and started to see some of his friends, and then there were lots of bones from animals that had not survived. And then he saw the grizzly bear, monster's heart, and he hit the bear on the nose, which is now why the bear has such a short, stubby nose. And then he saw a rattlesnake, and he stomped on the rattlesnake's head, and he flattened the rattlesnake, and that's why if you don't want to get close to a rattlesnake, but if you see them, they do have a flat head. Then he came to his close friend, the fox, and he asked the fox to help him gather anything that would burn. And then Coyote arrives at the heart of the monster. He cuts off slabs of fat and he throws it to the people, and then he starts the fire. Because he had that wood and the flintstone, he could get the fire going. Oh, Coyote, says the monster, let me cast you out. Now the fire's burning near the heart. And so the pieces of the heart suddenly got ripped away. Coyote is ripping all the heart apart. And what do you think happened? What do you think happened? The monster died, that's right, because you can't live without a heart, right? So then, suddenly when he died, all of the openings on his body, which I'll leave to your imagination, got open. And the people kicked their way out. And then Coyote, he got out, and he told everybody to gather up the bones. And then he began to cut away at the monster's body. And you know what he did with pieces of the monster's body? He threw them. And he threw them to different places all over the country, all over the land, toward the sunrise and the sunset, north and south. And with each part, he named a tribe, so that he was giving the tribes a piece of the land, the Cayuse and the Flatheads, the Blackfeet, the Coeur d'Alene, and the Yakima. But for the Nez Perce, he saved the best for last. He took the heart of the monster and he threw it by the Clearwater River. And the Namipu, people crossing over the divide, have the beautiful Kamei Valley in Idaho. And much like how our church got started, this is how all the Native American tribes got started. Yes. Do you believe it's real? You don't. But it's, okay, she likes it. You don't think it's real. I like it because it's a wonderful story of how the native tribes got their land. And of course, the Nez Perce, the Namipu, are down on the Clearwater River, and they really got some nice land. Just like we have nice land here in Spokane, Washington. Okay, yes. Oh, there you go. Well, you know. Yeah, the snow monster. Outside, the snow monster. Okay, well, thank you for listening. A snow tornado. We're having a snow tornado? Yeah. Oh, it lives in the river. Okay, I have to watch for it. Because I live down by the river, so I have to watch for the snow monster that lives by the river. But anyway, that's my story. It's a faraway river. It's called Jupiter River. I like that. That's my story for today. And now let's sing our children to the classroom.
So, good morning, everyone. We just finished our Path to Membership classes. You can't hear it now? I'm terrible about this. Now, can you hear me? Okay. So we just finished our Fall Path to Membership classes. So today is New Member Sunday, and it's when we introduce you to our new members and we welcome into our church. And so I think that I speak for our team and for all of you when I say how grateful we are that they have, first of all, found our church and that they have decided to become our members of this congregation. I don't think there's a higher compliment to us than that. So if they would come forward, and there's a lot of inserts this week, so if you would bring your orange inserts, and also we have some people who have signed the book but not gone through the classes, I think since April, so if they could come up also so you can meet them. And then after the service, so let's have you line up right here. Just line up right there. So after the service, I hope you all join us for cake so that you can meet everyone. Come on up. Oh, okay, wonderful. You haven't signed the book yet. Oh, you have. Okay, wonderful. Oh, 1980. Okay, wonderful, wonderful. Oh, this is great. So what we're going to do is hand you a rose, and then I'm going to give you the mic, and you can just pass it down and introduce yourselves. We have to make sure they're not wet.
This is Gerald Ocker and my family.
I'm Sophia. I'm Harry.
Ariel Ocker. Sheila Rawls.
Barbara Nelson.
Dan Ivanko.
Teresa Evans.
Marilyn Johnson.
Sarah Brandon.
John Brandon.
Jocelyn Legoski.
Charlie McClellan.
Jody Rizicki, returning member.
Gerald Rizicki, returning member.
Okay, well, we're going to go through our formal ritual in just a moment, but one, I wanted to just personally welcome all of you. It's been great getting to see you and get to know all of you a little bit, at least over the past few months. So thank you for honoring us by signing our membership book. And this is kind of a special day because this is also our denomination day. So we're celebrating being part of a Unitarian Universalist, larger Unitarian Universalist family. And it's so nice on this day to have you to join our church family. And as I know explained to those of you who made it to new member class, and maybe to everyone who signed the book, that if you think about the etymology of it, signing something is the most significant thing you can do, right? What do you guys do to join the church, Unitarian church? Oh, we sign a book. Seems kind of a small thing, but actually, think about what you do whenever you sign anything, right? When we sign a check, when we sign a petition, when we sign a letter, when we sign a document, we are authorizing that document. And so by signing our membership book, not only do you join our congregation, but you say something about our congregation that really honors us, that you feel strongly enough about our mission and who we are and what we're about to lend your authority to become co-creators, co-authors of what we become from here. So I really want to thank all of you for honoring us by your presence in the world, but especially in our community on this day. I'm going to turn this back over to Pat.
All right, and if you look in your insert and follow along with us, and then also our new members. So we are honored that you have chosen to become members of our church, having found a connection with Unitarian Universalism and expressed your commitment to this community. Membership at the Unitarian Universalist Church of Spokane is both a privilege and a responsibility. It's a place we hope you will feel safe to explore your own path, yet feel a sense of belonging and support. We look forward to our work together in fulfilling the mission of our church and to the many gifts and support you bring to us.
So you either have signed our membership book or are likely to do so in just a moment. And we have already given you a rose, which is a symbol of our covenant, representing our hope that you will fully bloom here in your new faith community. So if you would all say your part. Thank you. And I know that our congregation wants to respond in kind, so if you will turn to number 442 in the gray hymnal for responsive reading. Number 442. And I will begin and will ask the entire congregation to respond today as a formal welcome to you, our newest members. We bid you welcome who come with weary spirit seeking rest. We bid you welcome who come with hope in your heart. We bid you welcome who are seekers of a new faith. We bid you welcome who enter this hall as a homecoming. Whoever you are, whatever you are, wherever you are on your journey, and we invite you now to take your place among us. And if you Okay, so yes, you may.
We're going to sing to them as they sign the book. So you'll see the words on the screen up here to number 1008, When Our Heart is in a Holy Place. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when we trust the wisdom in each of us, every color, every creed and kind, and we see our faces in each other's eyes, then our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when we tell a story from deep inside, and we listen with a loving mind, and we hear our voices in each other's words, then our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when we share our silence, a sacred space, and the good of our heart stirs within, and we see the power of each other's faith, then our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart when our heart is in a holy place. First verse. When we test the wisdom in each of us, every color, every creed and kind, and we see our faces in each other's eyes, then our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when we tell our story from deep inside, and we listen with a loving mind, and we hear our voices in each other's words, then our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when we share the silence of sacred space, and the God of our heart stirs within, and we feel the power of each other's faith, then our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place. Want to do that chorus again? When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place again, when our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place.
They are so worth the wait.
Yep.
They very well may be the ones we've been waiting for. Let's go ahead.
So while we're doing that, I want to congratulate everybody on moving their clock back. So your offering is what makes our ministry in your life and in the world at this church large and impossible. If this ministry speaks to you, we invite you to give generously. We are exceedingly grateful for all of your financial help and your volunteer support.
Thank you. We are now going to kindle our candles of care, and then we are going to move right into our special music today, just to sort of augment things a little bit here. But we do want to have our candles of care on behalf of those we're most thinking about this morning, and especially want to kindle a candle for our friend Char Wilson, who's a longtime member here. A lot of you know that she's had a couple of brain surgeries during the past 2 years and recently has entered under hospice care. So please keep Char and her loved ones in your thoughts. Let's take just a moment of silence now on behalf of others we might be thinking of, and as always, you'd be welcome to name them aloud at this time if you'd like. Those named aloud and those embraced in our silence, and all those who are suffering in our world at this hour, we hold in our community with compassion.
We're going to sing you a song by Issei Barnwell, who is a wonderful doctor of music. She was one of the founders of Sweet Honey in the Rock, wonderful group. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. We are our grandmother's prayers, and we are our grandfather's dreamings. We are the breath of our ancestors. We are the Spirit of God. We are mothers of courage and fathers of time. We are daughters of dust and the sons of great visions. We're sisters of mercy and brothers of love. We are lovers of life and the builders of nations. We're seekers of truth and keepers of faith. We are makers of peace and the wisdom of ages. We are our grandmother's prayers, and we are our grandfather's dreamings. We are the breath of our ancestors. We are the Spirit of God. Sisters and brothers of truth. We are choosers of growth and the sons of visions. We're teachers of faith and visions of truth. We are daughters of life and the sons of nations. Keepers of truth and keepers of faith. We are makers of peace and the wisdom of nations. We are our grandmother's prayers, and we are our grandfather's dreamings. We are the breath of our ancestors. We are the Spirit of God. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are.
Thank you both so much. Next time we have 16 new members, we'll probably sing Let It Be a Dance We Do, or one of those that just takes forever. With a really slow tempo. Let it be a dance we do. Oh, goodness. So this is, as I mentioned, Denominational Sunday, in which we try to appreciate our greater connection to this incredible faith of ours. And I wanted to go through the presentation that I often give during our new member classes to introduce Unitarian Universalism, but I also enjoy doing it for the congregation just every 2 or 3 years, just about enough time for you to forget what I said, so I can say it again. But this is Unitarian Universalist history in a nutshell. And I begin by telling you that today's sociologists actually classify Unitarian Universalism as an NRM, which stands for New Religious Movement. That's the polite term they use now for cult. I think this is because our association was, the Unitarian Universalist only began the association in 1961. So that must be where that interpretation is coming from, because our faith has been around a lot longer than that. As we shall see, there's a good case for tracing it back at least to the 16th century, but I like to go back even farther, all the way back to this fellow, Jesus of photo along with the Dead Sea Scrolls, so we know it's authentic. So being Jewish, along with his followers, would have meant that Jesus himself and his Jewish followers were Unitarians in their theology, because that's what defines Jewish theology, is its Unitarianism, its belief in one God, which is the traditional meaning of the term. As such, they would have seen Jesus as a human being and followed him because there was something special about his teachings. Probably the humanitarian, communitarian nature of them, in which he taught his followers to love one another, to share our wealth, to seek only enough for today, our daily bread, right? To live sustainably, to heal the sick, maybe universal health care would help with that, to feed the hungry, to practice nonviolent, non-cooperation with oppressive authorities, inclusion of all who've been marginalized and left out, equality, if you will, radical inclusion, and of course forgiving one another, including our own enemies. Although we are today, would no longer define ourselves as a Christian faith, I think we would all agree that these principles lie at the heart of who we are as Unitarian Universalist, which is why I still say that Unitarians make the best Catholics. So not only were Jesus and his followers Unitarian in their theology, but this fellow, the very first systematic Christian theologian, in other words, the first Christian who tried to write down what it is that Christians believe, Origen of Alexandria, born in the 2nd century, was a Universalist. He was Universalist in his theology because he did not believe in eternal damnation. He couldn't imagine how a loving God could punish people forever, which again was the original meaning of that term. So he thought that everyone, including demons, would be released from hell and eventually embraced in the all-loving arms of the God he worshipped. This is not necessarily a Unitarian Universalist belief, though some of you may share a belief in reincarnation, but oddly enough, this first systematic Christian theologian was also a reincarnationist. He believed in the pre-existence of souls that were born into human form in order to work out their salvation, if you will, which helped him explain why there was evil in the world, even though he believed in an all-loving, perfect God. Unfortunately, as you can see, he was tortured to death in 250, and his works were declared heresy, and in 543, almost 250 years after his execution, and ordered destroyed. And then, actually the same year he was executed, this fellow was born. This is Arius, another Christian theologian, who just so happened to be Unitarian in his belief. In other words, he did not accept that the Father and Son were on equal status. He said there was a time when the Son was not, if you will. So he saw the Father as superior to the Son, that there was only one God, and therefore Jesus had to be a human being. And that became a very controversial subject. As Christianity evolved, there emerged a higher and higher Christology, meaning that the idea of Christ's divinity began to become paramount, and some still argued against it from the old days, including Arius. And so, by the 4th century, when Constantine had Christianized the faith, Romanized Christianity, if you will, he said, we've got to settle this matter once and for all. So I want you to get together, have a council, and make a decision. And by the way, I think you should use the term homoousia, which means that the Father and Son are of one substance. So that was the beginning of what was to become the Trinitarian idea, that the Father and Son are the same being. And in fact, just about 50 years later, the Council of Constantinople added the Holy Spirit to the Creed, and that was the invention of the doctrine of the Trinity in response to the Arian controversy, in response to Unitarianism. We often think that Unitarianism was a response to Trinitarianism, but it was the other way around. As I like to say, given Origen's Universalism and Arius' Unitarianism, it's fair to say we were here first. But after our original ideas were outlawed, came heresy. That's right. The Dark Ages set in. And they lasted for almost 800 years until Enlightenment struck. And what happened to cause this enlightenment? Did somebody say, let there be light? Sort of. Somebody said, let there be books. With the invention of the printing press in 1439, you guys remember what the first book is that was printed? The Gutenberg Bible, which meant that for the first time it was possible for ordinary people to begin reading and interpreting the Bible for themselves, including this very special fellow. This is Michael Servetus, who was a Spanish theologian who read the Bible and was very surprised upon doing so to find no reference to the Trinity in it. And he said, I just can't wait to tell everybody. And so he published a book called On the Errors of the Trinity, for which a church reformer, John Calvin, founder of Presbyterianism, was incensed and declared him a heretic, and Servetus had to go into hiding. And he hid for many years, and while he was there studying science, he discovered the pulmonary vascular system. Pretty big achievement, but was eventually captured, and John Calvin himself tried to get him to recant. He wouldn't do it, and so he prosecuted him and sentenced that he be burned to death along with his books, and that is exactly what happened. So a sad end to Servetus, but not an end to Unitarianism or the Unitarian heresy, if you will. In fact, a lot of people thought enough of Servetus that didn't necessarily make them Unitarians, but they wondered, why should we burn this guy over his ideas? And so even more inherent in our faith than the idea of there being one God, which is perhaps one more than some of us believe these days, in these days. But inherent really from that far back was this value, right, that you don't burn people for their ideas, literally or figuratively. We don't make enemies out of people we disagree with. So that really became a very core principle and a value we continue to share today, thanks to the sacrifice of Michael Servetus. And his ideas spread a bit. This was John Sigismund, the king of Hungary, and he got really tired of the dissension himself in his kingdom and said, I think we need to convene some sort of council. I want to get all the religious leaders from the different sects together, and I'm going to hear from all of them, and then I'll decide which is the best religion. So that's what he did. He called together the Torda religious debate in 1568, and he really particularly liked what this guy had to say. This was Ferenc David, who was a Unitarian in his theology. And John Sigismund liked him so much, he said, that's the right one, I'm going to become a Unitarian. And he appointed David to be his bishop. So we had the first Unitarian king and bishop right here in the 16th century. And David, whether he said it or not, is famous for saying, we need not think alike. Also a statement that just epitomizes that core principle of not burning each other over our ideas. And together, this dynamic duo, I call the Batman and Robin of the 16th century, got together and drafted and passed the first religious liberty law in human history. Can you believe that? The first law protecting people's right to believe what they want came from the Unitarians that long ago, and this is what it said. The Edict of Torda, 1568. In every place the preacher shall preach and explain the gospel, each according to his understanding of it, and if the congregation like it, well. If not, no one shall compel them, for their souls would not be satisfied. But they shall be permitted to keep a preacher whose teaching they approve. Therefore, none of the superintendents or others shall abuse the preachers. No one shall be reviled for his religion by anyone according to the previous statutes, and it is not permitted that anyone should threaten anyone else by imprisonment or by removal from his post for his teaching. Yeah. Unfortunately, King Sigismund died just a couple years after this, and those who took his position sort of rescinded it. They grandfathered those who had already been protected under the law in, but nobody could have new ideas. And David ended up being arrested and languishing to death in prison. Nevertheless, that did not put out the light. This fellow, he was an Italian heretic named Faustus Socinus, who was also Unitarian in his beliefs, inspired by his uncle. And he'd actually gone to Hungary to help defend David to no avail, and then himself had to flee to Poland as a heretic. Poland was known then as the Heretics' Asylum. A lot of folks fled there in part because Unitarianism had made people more open, but also because they had rejected the Calvinist doctrine. What he carried to Poland and across Eastern Europe was his disbelief in the Trinity, his disbelief in hell, his disbelief in atonement, which means he didn't teach that someone had to die for the rest of us to be worthy of God's love. He taught rather that Jesus was a human being, and that if you wanted to be saved, you could be saved by following his teachings, by actually putting those principles we looked at earlier into practice. So it started off in Transylvania or Hungary, migrated to Poland, from there to Germany, then on into England, and finally it made it across to the Americas. And once here, we got a pretty early start in this country. This is King's Chapel, established way back in 1686, which was one of the first churches in the country, the first Anglican church. But look what they did. In 1782, they called Reverend James Freeman, who was a Unitarian minister, and it became the first Unitarian church in the country. So, as you can see, we've been around a lot longer than since 1961. And then a short time after that, in 1825, a national organization, the American Unitarian Association, was formed. So that's how the Unitarians got here. Now, how did the Universalists come about? Well, remember this guy? Dun, 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 dun.
Servetus, I am your father.
I've been waiting to do that all year. So yes, John Calvin may be better known than for burning Servetus for his doctrine of predeterminism or predestination. A lot of you have heard of that. This was the idea that only a very few, an elect few, will be saved for all eternity, and that they were selected before the earth was even created. And has nothing to do with what anybody's done to deserve it. That's just written in a book somewhere. They were foreordained again before the foundations of the world, and the rest of us are going to suffer in eternal hell. The decision is final. So if you didn't accept this, you might have a rather adverse reaction to it. And if you had an adverse reaction to it, your reaction might be quite the opposite. And if you have a reaction that's quite the opposite, it would be a universalist response, because that's the opposite of predeterminism. Universalism is the belief, originally anyway, in universal atonement, meaning that everybody is salvageable. Everybody gets an invitation to the party. That people can choose for themselves. It's not something that's been determined for them by some being before anything even happened. And that God only knows who's going to make that choice, and that the decision is theirs, not final. So the Universalist response was really, at least this reawakened form of it in the 16th century, was a response to Calvinism. It went on to influence a lot of folks in Europe, including this fellow, Reverend John Murray, an English minister, who had actually been declared a heretic by the Calvinist church he was raised in, but became a Universalist minister. And he suffered some losses. His spouse and child died about the same time. He became despondent and decided he was going to leave the ministry and wanted to get away from it all by going to the New World to start a new life. And while he was en route aboard the Hand in Hand, it ran aground off the Jersey Shore in 1770. And there he met a fellow named Charles Potter, a farmer. And it just so happened that Potter was a Universalist. And it just so happened that Potter built a chapel on the island. And it just so happened that Potter had been praying to God to deliver a Universalist minister. So we call this the first and only Universalist miracle in history. So, reluctant to do so, but under the circumstances being very gracious, Murray gave the first Universalist sermon in America on September 30th in 1770. Again, a lot longer than since 1961, right? And he got the bug, and he became someone who spread the teachings of Universalism as best he could with an evangelical fervor, famously saying, "Go out into the highways and byways of America, give the people blanketed with a decaying and crumbling religion something of your new vision. You may possess only a small light, but uncover it, let it shine. Use it in order to bring more light and understanding to the hearts and minds of men and women. Give them not hell, but hope and courage." Beautiful, right? Beautiful. So that's how Universalism came to be, with the evangelism of John Murray, who went on to, he left the island. I want to go to my notes here because I want to make sure that I get this part right. He ended up going to Massachusetts, to Gloucester, and became the founder and pastor of the first Universalist society in America there, where he gave the first sermon in 1774, and it was several years later that the church was actually formally formed. I think 1779 it was established, and it had 61 members. And what they did was declare their independence from the Church of Christ of Gloucester, which was the official church there. The official church was not happy about it, and so they started persecuting the First Parish Church for its Calvinistic heresy. They also refused to pay their required taxes to, not the First Parish, but to the Church of Christ. That's a typo there. But to the Church of Christ. And so the authorities actually began confiscating their church property and their church belongings so they could auction them off to pay their tithe, or what was then considered their taxes. And so the Universalists reacted in a way that any good Universalist would. They sued them. And they won. They won, and in 1786, the case they won determined that no church anywhere was allowed to be publicly funded from that day forward. So if you want to know who gave you separation of church and state, you can thank the Universalists for that. And they formed their national association in 1793 in Pennsylvania. So pretty incredible origin story there. Pretty incredible creation story of our faith. And we've done a lot of great things since. We have been committed to religious freedom and fought for separation of church and state, obviously, but also did so by trying to help establish non-religious education for all ages. And one of our members, famous members, of course, was Horace Mann, the father of public education. And then as early as 1840, we participated in a worldwide anti-slavery convention, and just a few years later declared that slavery is contrary to the plainest dictates of natural justice and Christian love, and to that doctrine of universal grace and love which we cherish is the most important of revealed truth. So we were on the right page here long before even the Civil War started or ended. And this one you're going to have trouble believing, that in 1845, the Mount Olympus Church opened its membership to a free African-American man and his family. You know where? Where Mount Olympus is? Mount Olympus Universalist Church, you know where that is? Alabama. 1845. In 1880, we ordained our first African-American minister, Joseph Jordan. And Jordan was remarkable not only for being founder of the Universalist Church in Norfolk at a time in 1887 when liberals were leaving the South in droves. He stayed and not only built a church, but started a freedmen's school for African-American children that was mostly staffed by our wonderful friends, the Quakers, as well as Unitarians and Universalists. We also were the first denomination in the country to, in 1863, ordain a woman as a minister, Olympia Brown, who was a pretty incredible lady. She was first to graduate from a theological school in the nation, and was among the first generation of women suffragists, and actually lived long enough to see the 19th Amendment passed. Pretty incredible, huh? So there are lots of other extraordinary women in our faith. You could do just an entire, you could do weeks on it, really, known and unknown. But I want to just mention just a few of some that names you might know. This is Mary Wollstonecraft, who, of course, was well known for her book Frankenstein, which she couldn't even publish under her name. She had to publish it originally under her husband's name. But she was even more famous for her book, Vindication of the Rights of Woman. And in the 18th century was really known as the sort of foremother of feminism because of her work in that area. Dorothy Dix chose to become a Unitarian as an adult, and is remembered for her work as a suffragist, but also, more importantly, for establishing hospitals and improving conditions and treatment, especially for the mentally ill. Margaret Fuller, born a Unitarian, was America's first female book reporter and herself the author of what is considered the first major feminist book in our nation, Woman of the 19th Century. She fought for women's suffrage, women's education, prison reform, ending poverty and homelessness, and advocated for racial equality for blacks and Native Americans. According to her daughter, even Elizabeth Cady Stanton attended a Unitarian church when she was growing up. Stanton was an abolitionist, a voting rights activist, who also struggled for birth control and property rights for women, and served as the president of the National Women Suffrage Association. And one more to mention here, of course, is Julia Ward Howe, famous for writing Battle Hymn of the Republic, was another woman suffragist, abolitionist, and social activist who actually left her Calvinistic upbringing to become a Unitarian. In addition, Unitarian and Universalist have long stood for abolishing the death penalty throughout our history, but especially in 1974, when it was needed most, our denomination passed a statement of conscience calling for the abolishment of it again, because we had almost gotten rid of it in the 60s, and then in the 70s, by the time we adopted this statement to abolish the death penalty, 28 states had already reinstated it. So this is something we're still fighting for, struggling for. We also can claim to have some really great thinkers in our history. I won't name them all, but a couple you may be interested to know. Ralph Waldo Emerson and Henry David Thoreau, the founders of the Transcendentalist movement. They were Unitarian ministers. They complained a lot about Unitarianism. They didn't like the way we talked about ourselves, and actually challenged us to expand our language from seeing ourselves as a liberal end of the Christian faith to speaking more generally of ourselves in a transcendental way, if you will, as part of an oversoul and all more broadly connected. It challenged the faith. It caused a big controversy, but in the end, it won out. And we stopped speaking of ourselves as a Christian faith and more as a broader faith. And then in the 1930s, this fellow, who some of you will recognize, John H. Dietrich, became one of 6 ministers, 6 out of 13 people who signed the original Humanist Manifesto. And while Dietrich was here in this church as our minister between 1911 and 1916, he first claimed or owned himself to be a humanist. And went on to become known as the father of religious humanism. And he started that here in Spokane. So not only was it natural that humanism would come from a faith that always emphasized the humanity of Jesus and his humanitarian teachings, but to be able to make the claim that it was born in part from this very congregation is astounding and makes me especially proud to be able to occupy his pulpit. Which, by the way, he gave his first sermon here November 7th, 1911, and I was installed November 7th, 2011. 100 years to the day. Yeah. Oh, yes, this is a great piece of history. Universalist Aidan Ballou, who advocated nonviolence in his book, Christian Non-Resistance, it was a book that inspired Leo Tolstoy, who inspired Gandhi, who inspired Dr. King. So our ideas have had major impacts in the areas of justice and civil rights. So this is kind of the story of how we came together. As you can see, we had a lot in common. The Universalists believe that God is too good to damn them, and the Unitarians believe that they are too good to be damned. So we got together in 1961 and said, this is close enough. Why don't we join together and form the Unitarian Universalist cult? And since then, together, we were among the first to protest to be on the right side of that issue. We wrote resolutions against the Vietnam War as early as 1964. That was the same year that, unfortunately, this fellow died. He's a young Unitarian minister you may have heard of, James Reeb, who was one of those murdered while in Selma, Alabama, marching for civil rights. And that inspired Dr. King to come and give our Ware lecture at our General Assembly just a couple years later. And then in 1971, we became the original WikiLeaks because when the Pentagon files were released, we were the denomination we had a publishing house, Beacon Press, that were the only ones willing to actually publish them. And the federal government retaliated and actually came to our headquarters in Boston and seized our financial records, and we were heading to court, probably to the Supreme Court, were it not for Watergate, which interrupted everything, and I guess they sort of let us slide. And then we're still making history, a lot of you know, as individual churches as well as a denomination, including in 2013 when Unitarian Universalists right here in Spokane, Washington, helped make marriage equality legal in our state, which began a cascade of similar legislation around the country right up until the Supreme Court ended up making it national just a couple years later. So, that is just a sliver of our history. The rest is going to be up to you. And I hope that you will be somebody that I'll make a slide for and show on the next history lesson. Thank you very much.
So as we, as Unitarian Universalists, search to live our first principle, that we honor the inherent worth and dignity of every person, language becomes so very important. Language is power, life, and the instrument of culture, the instrument of domination and liberation, said Angela Carter. We need to strive to get out of our own language and comfortable rhetoric and shape how we express our values so that every ear hears. We do that by sharing our stories, not our ideas. Amen, blessed be, salam alaikum, shalom, and namaste.
joy.